Evans and Roy Rogers were the smiling royalty of the American West, a couple whose music, faith, and shining optimism made them seem untouchable. But the truth behind their legend was far heavier than the world ever knew. In her final years, when age stripped away the need to protect Hollywood's illusions, Dale finally began speaking about the private battles she had carried for decades. She admitted that the glamorous cowgirl image had hidden regrets, sacrifices, and emotional wounds she never dared reveal while cameras were rolling. Her honesty shocked many fans who thought they understood her story. But Dale insisted that masks help no one, not even legends. What she confessed at the end forces us to look at her life differently, beyond the rhinestones and theme songs. And to understand those late-life truths, you have to go back to a Texas girl whose life began nothing like the fairy tale she later played on screen. Before Hollywood renamed her Dale Evans, she was Frances Octavia Smith, a girl from Uvalde, Texas, navigating a childhood filled with more instability than safety. Her family moved often, and for a time she was raised by relatives in Arkansas, where she learned early that relying on others wasn't always an option. The bright lights and polished charm of the future cowgirl queen were nowhere in sight. Instead, Frances grew up surrounded by financial stress, emotional distance, and an environment that forced her to grow up quickly. She wasn't a carefree child, she was a survivor in training. These early years shaped the resilience she would later need, but they also planted the seeds of loneliness that followed her into adulthood. By her early teens, the pressures around her were already pushing her toward decisions that would have lifelong consequences. And one of those decisions came far sooner than anyone could have expected. At just 14, Frances made a choice most adults would hesitate to make. She eloped with Thomas F. Fox. By 15, she was a mother to a baby boy named Tommy. What should have been a hopeful beginning quickly collapsed. The marriage fell apart almost immediately, leaving her abandoned in Memphis, a teenage girl trying to raise a child alone in a world that wasn't kind to young mothers. Jobs were scarce, money was tighter, and the judgment she faced was constant. Hollywood would later craft a wholesome story around her, but the truth was far more difficult. She entered adulthood carrying responsibility, shame, and fears far beyond her age. With no support and a child depending on her, Frances turned to the only skill she had that could keep them afloat: her voice. Singing in small radio stations wasn't glamorous, but it was survival. And through that struggle came the first step toward the reinvention that would change her life. During long nights at modest radio stations, Frances began slowly rebuilding her life. She played piano, sang whatever songs were needed, and clung to the hope that music could carve a path out of hardship. Then fate shifted. A radio manager in Louisville suggested she change her name, claiming Frances Smith sounded too ordinary for the spotlight. From that moment, Dale Evans was born, a name crisp enough for Hollywood and distant enough from her painful past. With this new identity came a fresh start, but it also came with quieter demands. Hollywood didn't just want talent, it wanted perfection. As Dale's star started rising, the people in charge made it clear that her real history didn't fit the image they needed. They wanted a flawless cowgirl, a woman untouched by trouble. And to become that, Dale was told she had to let go of the truth she held closest. The cost of reinvention was about to cut deeper than she expected. Just as her career began gaining momentum, studio executives delivered a command that would haunt her for decades. She must pretend her son Tommy was not her child, but her younger brother. The reasoning was simple and cold. Hollywood couldn't risk a rising star being labeled a divorced teenage mother. Dale was told to smile for the cameras, sign autographs, and step into the wholesome image they crafted for her, all while erasing her own motherhood in public. She complied, because refusing meant losing everything she had fought to build. But every interview, every staged photo, every fabricated detail about her brother added another layer of guilt. Dale later admitted that this lie remained one of her deepest pains, a wound she carried long after fame faded. And as she struggled with the emotional cost of hiding Tommy, another chapter of her life began opening, one filled with broken marriages, ambition, and a fateful meeting that would change Hollywood history. By the late 1930s, Dale's professional life was rising, but her personal life was unraveling. After ending her marriage to August Wayne Johns, she married pianist Robert Dale Butts in 1937. It seemed promising at first. They worked together, traveled together, and appeared to understand each other musically. But the emotional connection never took root. Their partnership felt more like a business arrangement than a marriage, and the loneliness Dale carried from her early life crept back into her home. Still, she pressed forward, pouring her energy into performing, recording, and building her Hollywood presence. Her voice, smooth yet commanding, opened doors to new opportunities at 20th Century Fox, and eventually to radio programs that made her a familiar name nationwide. But behind every milestone was a woman still searching for stability, still waiting for a place where she belonged. And it was during this restless climb that fate led her toward a man whose path would collide with hers in ways she never expected. In 1944, Dale was cast in The Cowboy and the Senorita, a film that changed her destiny. Her co-star was Roy Rogers, already a beloved singing cowboy with a devoted fan base. Their on-screen chemistry was instant and undeniable, the kind of natural connection that made directors smile and audiences root for them. But off-screen, both were still tied to other marriages, navigating complicated relationships that were already under strain. Dale felt the spark, but kept her distance, sensing the emotional turmoil beneath Roy's polished charm. Roy, meanwhile, admired her strength and kindness, drawn to her steady presence. They were two people searching for solid ground, unknowingly moving closer with each scene they filmed. Hollywood saw a perfect pair forming. Neither Dale nor Roy was ready to admit it yet, but the foundation of something far deeper had already begun. And soon, tragedy would pull them together in ways neither of them could have predicted. Everything shifted in 1946, when Roy Rogers faced a devastating loss. His second wife, Arlene, passed away shortly after giving birth to their son, Dusty, leaving Roy alone with 3 children and a grief that threatened to break him. Dale, who understood heartbreak better than most, quietly stepped in, offering support, friendship, and a steady voice during the darkest period of his life. She didn't push, didn't chase romance. She simply listened. And over time, Roy found comfort in the warmth she brought into his home, the way she cared for his children, and the gentleness that fame had never taken from her. Their bond deepened in the shadows of tragedy, built not on glamour, but on shared pain and unexpected companionship. Hollywood, always watching, began whispering about the connection between its favorite cowboy and the rising cowgirl star. And by late 1947, Roy decided to take a step that would tie their lives together forever. Roy's proposal was pure cowboy theatrics and heartfelt sincerity. Sitting atop Trigger just moments before riding into a Chicago rodeo arena, he asked Dale to marry him. She said yes without hesitation, feeling as though every chaotic chapter of her past had somehow led to this moment. They married on December 31st, 1947, at the Flying L Ranch, Dale's fourth marriage and Roy's third. But this time, the union felt different. Together, they stepped into a life the world adored, the king of the cowboys and the queen of the West, a couple who seemed blessed with love, faith, and fresh beginnings. Yet the fairy tale the audience embraced wasn't the whole story. Behind the public smiles were two people carrying private wounds, unresolved regrets, and the weight of expectations placed on them by Hollywood and by each other. Their marriage would last more than 50 years, but the struggles hidden inside it would shape Dale's later confessions. After the wedding, Dale stepped into a new role, not just as Roy's wife, but as the mother figure to his three children, Cheryl, Linda, and little Dusty. Roy, in turn, embraced Tommy, allowing Dale to finally acknowledge her son openly without fear of damaging her career. It was a healing moment for her, but the years of pretending still cast a long shadow. Their home quickly became a blend of past wounds and hopeful beginnings, a patchwork family built on love and second chances. Dale tried to give the children stability, structure, and warmth, often putting their needs before her own. And for a while, the new household found a steady rhythm: music, filming schedules, and the sound of kids filling every corner. But life had a way of testing the Rogers-Evans family, and soon another child would enter their world. Her arrival would bring both immeasurable joy and the deepest heartbreak Dale had ever known. In 1950, Dale gave birth to the only biological child she and Roy would share, Robin Elizabeth. From the moment she arrived, it was clear Robin faced serious challenges. She was born with Down syndrome and severe health complications, and in an era when developmental disabilities were rarely spoken about, the world around them responded with whispers and judgment. Some doctors even advised the couple to place Robin in an institution, warning that raising her publicly might tarnish their image. But Dale and Roy refused. They brought Robin home, wrapped her in unconditional love, and vowed to give her every bit of care they could. Robin's short life softened their home in unexpected ways, grounding Dale in a deeper purpose that fame couldn't touch. But joy often traveled beside sorrow. As Robin's health worsened, Dale found herself praying harder, hoping for a miracle she feared wouldn't come. And soon, heartbreak would strike again, shattering the fragile peace they had built. Robin passed away just before her second birthday, and the loss hit Dale with a force she could barely withstand. She later admitted her faith trembled under the weight of grief, leaving her questioning almost everything she believed. But in that darkness, Dale found a strange calling. She began writing what would become Angel Unaware, a book told from Robin's viewpoint in heaven. It wasn't meant to be poetic. It was a mother's desperate attempt to make sense of tragedy. When the book was published in 1953, Hollywood was stunned. Stars didn't expose personal pain, especially not in such raw, spiritual terms. Yet the public response was overwhelming. Letters poured in from parents who had suffered similar losses, thanking Dale for giving their grief a voice. The book reshaped national attitudes toward children with disabilities, offering compassion where shame once lived. Dale had transformed sorrow into something powerful. But even as the world praised her strength, she carried wounds few ever saw. The success of Angel Unaware cast Dale into a new, unexpected role: America's comforter. She became a beacon for grieving parents, someone who understood loss and could express it with honesty and hope. Conferences booked her, churches welcomed her, and letters kept arriving from families across the country. Dale answered as many as she could, pouring her heart into every reply. But privately, the emotional cost was heavier than anyone realized. Each story she read brought back pieces of her own pain, reopening wounds that hadn't fully healed. And while the public saw a woman of unshakable faith, Dale was still wrestling with doubts and regrets she was too afraid to voice. Meanwhile, her career with Roy kept accelerating. Their films, recordings, and public appearances created the illusion of a perfect cowboy partnership. Yet the bigger their brand became, the harder it was for Dale to acknowledge the struggles happening behind the scenes and inside her own heart. Throughout the 1950s, Roy Rogers and Dale Evans became the ultimate Western power couple. Their films drew crowds, their radio appearances captured families nationwide, and The Roy Rogers Show turned them into weekly visitors in American living rooms. Roy rode Trigger, Dale rode Buttermilk, and together they embodied a wholesome dream built on music, morals, and frontier charm. Their signature song, Happy Trails, made millions believe they were living a storybook life. Yet the spotlight came with intense pressure. Dale worked tirelessly, writing songs, perfecting her performances, managing children at home, and keeping up with a schedule that never seemed to slow down. To the audience, she appeared strong, composed, and endlessly cheerful. But balancing fame with motherhood, grief, and expectations was exhausting. Inside the walls of their home, Dale often struggled to keep pace with the image the world demanded from her. And soon, another life-changing moment would break through the glow of Hollywood success. As their fame soared, the Rogers-Evans household grew even larger. Dale and Roy opened their home to children who needed love and stability, adopting Mimi from Scotland, Dodie from a Native American community, Sandy, and Debbie. They also fostered several others, creating a family that reflected their belief in second chances. Their home buzzed with laughter, responsibility, and the everyday chaos of raising a large, blended family. But beneath the joy was a constant undercurrent of strain. Dale was determined to give every child the affection and guidance she had longed for in her own childhood. Yet the emotional load was immense. She juggled filming schedules, songwriting, public events, and the quiet demands of motherhood, all while trying to keep her own grief tucked away. And just when it seemed they were finally finding balance, a tragedy struck that would tear open every old wound and change their family forever. In 1964, the Rogers-Evans family faced a tragedy that cut deeper than anyone could have imagined. Debbie, their 12-year-old adopted daughter, was killed in a horrific church bus accident while returning from a mission trip. The news shattered Dale. She later admitted she felt a suffocating guilt, wondering if she could have prevented it or protected her daughter in some other way. The grief was eerily familiar, echoing the pain she felt when she lost Robin. This time, though, the sorrow struck a household already stretched thin by responsibility and years of emotional burdens. Roy and Dale tried to stay strong for their other children, but the ache seeped into every part of their lives. It didn't just break their hearts, it broke the sense of safety they had tried so hard to build. Hoping to outrun the darkness, they made a drastic decision to leave their Chatsworth ranch. But grief has a way of following, no matter how far you go. The family relocated to Apple Valley, settling into the Double R Bar Ranch in hopes that new scenery might bring healing. Apple Valley offered a quieter life, open skies, friendly neighbors, and a slower pace far removed from Hollywood's demands. But even in this fresh landscape, the echoes of Debbie's death lingered. Dale found herself drifting through days with a heaviness she couldn't shake, trying to appear strong for her children while privately confronting emotions she had avoided for years. This period also magnified the differences in how she and Roy processed pain. Roy stayed busy, focused on work, structure, and discipline, while Dale wrestled with reflection, faith, and the hidden fractures within herself. Though the world still saw them as a flawless pair, the truth behind closed doors was far more complicated. And as America moved into the social and cultural upheaval of the 1960s, Dale stepped into a new role that would stir even more tension. During the 1960s, Dale's voice grew louder in America's rising culture wars. She became a champion for public expressions of faith, most notably at the 1964 Project Prayer rally in Los Angeles, where she addressed thousands in support of restoring mandatory school prayer. She aligned herself with conservative movements, even campaigning for Barry Goldwater's presidential run. To her fans, this bold public stance made her a moral guide, someone unafraid to speak about God in an industry that often kept quiet. But this newfound activism added pressure at home. The more Dale took on, the more emotionally drained she felt. Her public strength became another mask she had to maintain, one that demanded constant optimism and certainty. Yet underneath, unresolved struggles simmered: grief, exhaustion, and the unspoken challenges within her marriage. And while the world applauded her courage, Dale was privately fighting a growing loneliness that she would not discuss openly until years later. Behind the facade of America's ideal Western couple, Dale and Roy's marriage carried tensions fans never saw. Roy, admired as the gentle cowboy on screen, was stricter at home, especially with the children. His approach to discipline often clashed with Dale's softer instincts, leaving her feeling isolated in her own household. She also struggled with the long stretches Roy spent away filming, touring, or handling business obligations. While audiences saw a united pair, Dale spent years managing the emotional load largely on her own. The pressure to maintain a perfect public image only deepened her silence. She feared that admitting the truth, loneliness, disagreements, and exhaustion, would disappoint the millions who adored them. So she hid it, burying her hurt under smiles and carefully chosen words. But decades later, as time softened her fear of judgment, she finally revealed how heavy those hidden years had been. Among all the burdens Dale carried, none weighed on her more deeply than the lie she was forced to tell about Tommy. For over a decade, she publicly referred to her own son as her younger brother, following the studio's demand to protect her image. Even after she married Roy and finally revealed the truth, the damage lingered. Dale confessed in later life that denying her motherhood left a scar she could never fully heal. Every movie poster, every interview, every cheerful appearance during those years reminded her of what she had sacrificed for fame. Although Tommy forgave her, Dale never forgave herself. The deception shaped her view of Hollywood, reminding her of how easily the industry stripped away personal truth for public perfection. Determined to reclaim her voice, she began writing more openly, turning regret, grief, and honesty into her most powerful tools. And soon, those truths would reshape how the world remembered her. As Dale entered the later decades of her life, writing became her refuge, a place where she could finally speak without fear, polish, or Hollywood restraint. She authored book after book, sharing stories of loss, faith, and healing. Many were written for grieving parents, people carrying invisible pain, or anyone searching for hope in seasons of darkness. Dale poured her soul into these pages, revealing the wounds she had once hidden behind rhinestones and bright smiles. Her authenticity resonated deeply. Fans who once admired her as a performer now saw her as a guide through suffering. She traveled to churches, conferences, and TV programs, offering comfort shaped by experience rather than theory. But these public acts of compassion came with a cost. Each speech brought back memories she had tried to bury, Each letter reminded her of children she couldn't save. And though she gave strength to millions, Dale privately wondered how much of her own she had left. By the 1990s, time began to dim the spotlight that had followed Roy and Dale for decades. Nostalgia shows invited them to reminisce about Hollywood's golden era, and fans still adored seeing the legendary couple together. But behind the scenes, Roy's health was failing. Dale stayed by his side through every decline, every hospital visit, every quiet evening marked by worry. Their partnership, once filled with music and rodeos, shifted into something quieter and more tender. When Roy passed away on July 6, 1998, Dale lost not only her husband, but the partner who had shaped half a century of her life. She found herself suddenly alone, no longer one half of America's favorite duo. His absence left an ache that settled into her bones, a silence she struggled to describe. And yet, the end of Roy's life also marked the beginning of a new honesty in Dale's. Without him, she no longer felt obligated to protect their perfect image. In the years after Roy's death, Dale grew more reflective and more willing to share the truths she had kept locked away. She spoke about the loneliness she faced during Roy's long absences, the emotional distance that sometimes crept into their marriage, and the weight of raising a large family while balancing fame. She admitted that Roy's strict parenting style placed a strain on their household, especially during moments when she felt their children needed comfort rather than discipline. But perhaps the most startling revelations were the regrets she had carried for decades, the lie about Tommy, the emotional corners she'd hidden herself in, and the heartbreaks she had been too afraid to name. Her daughter Dodie later said that Dale believed in telling the whole truth, both the beautiful and the painful, because she wanted people to understand that even legends are human. And with her health fading, Dale finally found peace in honesty. Dale Evans passed away on February 7, 2001, at the age of 88, just 3 years after losing Roy. Her final days were described as peaceful, surrounded by family, and filled with a sense of readiness. She often spoke about reuniting with Roy, Robin, Debbie, and the loved ones she had lost. With her passing, America said goodbye to the Queen of the West, a woman who had shaped generations of entertainment, faith, and compassion. But Dale's true legacy extended far beyond cowboy films and nostalgic TV endings. She helped transform public understanding of children with disabilities, challenged the silence around grief, and proved that vulnerability could be a form of strength. She showed that behind every perfectly crafted Hollywood image lies a person carrying invisible battles. Her story remains a reminder that resilience isn't born from perfection, but from truth. Truth she finally allowed the world to see. And long after the trail ended, her voice continues to echo. Looking back, Dale Evans's life was a tapestry woven from glamour, heartbreak, courage, and confession. Fans adored the sparkling cowgirl beside Roy Rogers, but the woman behind the smile carried burdens she revealed only when time softened her fears. She had lived through early poverty, broken marriages, Hollywood's demands, the loss of children, and the pressures of maintaining a flawless image. Yet when she finally chose to speak openly, Dale reshaped her legacy. Not as an untouchable icon, but as a woman who dared to tell the truth. And that truth forces a question worth asking. Should stars share their real struggles while they're living? Or is the world too quick to judge? Too hungry for perfection? Did Dale wait because she feared public reaction? Or because confession requires a lifetime of courage? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Should legends reveal their truth sooner? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories of the icons you thought you knew.